Starship Troopers Ultimate Bug War is a game I've been looking forward to playing for a long time. I'm a huge fan of the Starship Troopers franchise, especially the first film. It actually sits there in my top 10 films of all time. Without a doubt, I really love it. I was the perfect age when it came out, and the franchise really leans into video games. It's absolutely perfect for it. Saying that, the only real time I've ever played anything associated with Starship Troopers as a video game was a mod for Duke Nukem that I played back on the PC in the late 90s, and I absolutely loved it. I played it to death. It was basically just a custom built map, and there were bugs, and it was just great. You had all the weapons and all that sort of stuff, but it wasn't a proper game. And this game, when it was announced, it really piqued my interest because obviously I'm a huge fan of the franchise. However, it also really did tick the box as far as my nostalgia for that original Duke Nukem mod, and so I was really looking forward to seeing what an actual legit licensed Starship Troopers game was going to be like. As always, I played the first 20 minutes to see whether this is worth your time, and if you like the format of the channel, please do give me a like and subscribe and a comment. I'd love to hear from you down in the comments. But having said all that, let's get into story. As opposed to doing what I expected, which would be a kind of a new story set within the Starship Troopers universe, this actually surprised me a lot by setting the game as a training simulator for potential new recruits into the army. So the idea is that there's a huge bug war going on, and you are being recruited or you are being trained up to be an elite Starship Trooper. The story is told to you through cutscenes, which are delivered by original cast members, which I thought were absolutely amazing. Just amazing nostalgic hits for me, and also they were just really well done. I thought that the humor was perfectly tongue-in-cheek and on point, and it did feel like it could come straight off the back of the original Starship Troopers film. I like the fact that it set everything up as a training simulation, and it just made you feel like you could just jump straight into the game and not worry too much about the story or what was going on, and just really enjoy these kind of big open battle scenes. And that's exactly what I want from a Starship Troopers game. So I thought it was really good. It was a really nice twist. It defied my expectation, and it just really doesn't get in the way of gameplay. It just lets you get on and play. And I thought that was a really good decision. I thought it was really well done. And although, yeah, there's nothing deep going on with story apart from that, and there's nothing within the gameplay to hint at a bigger story from what I could see, for an opening 20 minutes, it really does just set the scene. It gives you a bit of context as to what you're doing, and then it just lets you get on with it. So it deserves a lot of praise for that. And I'm going to give this one a 7 out of 10. Controls. So again, my expectation with this one was that it was going to feel like an old 90s, early 2000s shooter, just judging from the art style and everything I knew about the IP, and I wasn't disappointed. It did just feel like I was going back and playing a kind of Duke Nukem Doom kind of game, which is exactly what I want. There are a lot of things that you can do as far as platforming's concerned, and you're given a little kind of training simulation up front, very similar to what was in the film. And that gives you an obstacle course where you can basically maneuver around, you can jump, you can use zip lines and things. And then there's also combat, so it teaches you how to use grenades and obviously your weapons. And then you jump straight into the combat, so the actual first level of the game, which is a huge open world. And the controls basically are fairly intuitive. They don't really get in the way of anything. It just lets you get on there and have a lot of fun. There's a few things like being able to plant bombs onto bigger bugs, the ones that fire the kind of missiles and projectiles up into space. And aside from that, it really is just shooting and just blowing stuff up. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. It didn't really get in the way of anything. I found that it was very responsive, and I really enjoyed it. I just had a really good time for my first 20 minutes. It gave me everything that I wanted, and the controls didn't get in the way at all. I felt like I knew how to play it as soon as I started, which is a bonus. So yeah, there's nothing, I would say, new and creative going on as far as the controls are concerned. It just really does lean into what I would expect, and yeah, it didn't get in the way. It just let me have a lot of fun. So for controls, I'm going to give this one an 8 out of 10. Atmosphere. The original Starship Troopers film is soaked in this kind of military propaganda and action and chaos, and that was all present here in the first 20 minutes, which I was very pleased about. The framing of everything as a battle simulation, and you have these kind of really high glossy filmed FMV sequences, the cutscenes. I just thought that really set the scene, and it did just make me feel like I was within the Starship Troopers universe myself, which was amazing. And then when I was actually on the combat, again, just the music, the sound and everything, it just really, really did suck me in. And I think because I have a lot of, I've got a fond memory of the film and it's one of my favorites, just to be able to explore that universe. Again, for me personally, this was hugely, hugely immersive. I think if you haven't seen Starship Troopers before and this is your first time jumping in, it might take a little bit of time to get you immersed. You might not know exactly what's going on, and some of the design choices, such as the live action cutscenes, combined with the kind of retro graphics and gameplay, it might be a little bit jarring. You might not really get it, I think. But I think as a fan of the franchise, if you really, really like the films, I think this is really going to pull you in. And yeah, I was completely immersed, to be honest. It was one of those games where I was playing 20 minutes and I thought, actually, I need to check the clock because I'm going to play this for a lot longer. And that's a huge testament to just how much this game does to pull you in. So yeah, I'm going to give this one an 8 out of 10. Music and sound. Following on from atmosphere, the music and sound were crucial into recreating that original Starship Troopers vibe, and I was really pleasantly surprised. I think the sound design, first of all, was really well done. I really liked that everything sounded really satisfying and crunchy when you were shooting the bugs. You could hear every impact on them, which was good, and the weapons sounded really meaty and really powerful. Even just the voices of the different troopers shouting at each other and barking orders at each other, they had a really nice distortion onto it. It did just sound very 90s, and I really enjoyed it. It just felt like it was all part of the universe, which is obviously important. I think when it opened up to the open battle scene, the first level in Klendathu, you've just got this really wide soundscape and you can hear distant battles going on. You've got the music blasting out and you can hear people shouting and weapons going and the bug sounds and everything. It did just pull me in, and I did feel like, this is exactly what I would expect a Starship Troopers game to sound like. Just the sound design, it just sounded like it was a scene from the film, which is a huge bit of praise coming from me. The Starship Troopers soundtrack, the original soundtrack by Basil Polderis, is one of my all-time favorite soundtracks. I listen to it regularly, whether I'm working, whether I'm driving around, or whether I'm running. It's always on. And obviously, they didn't get to use the original soundtrack in this. I imagine that the budget would have been huge had they gone to license the original music, and so I can understand why they didn't use that. However, I think what is here is really good. I enjoyed the music in the training scene. It seems like it's right out of that Starship Troopers universe. You've got kind of big brass, and it sounds very military, and it sounds very heavy and important, and a little bit over the top, which is exactly what you need when you're leaning into this kind of propaganda style. The first level, the Klendathu battle, although it didn't use the famous Klendathu drop music, it just nods to it so much that actually after a while I did feel like it could have been that music in the background. It just really fit in with the whole universe. The way that it's composed and the instruments used and everything, it just made me feel like I was actually listening to the Starship Troopers music, or that it was an expansion of Basil Polderis' original ideas, and I really enjoyed it. I think it's absolutely on point, this, for a video game, especially based on the Starship Troopers IP, and for that reason, I'm going to have to give this a 9 out of 10. Graphics and style. Again, this was an absolute pleasure to look at. Outside of the really glossy, well-produced cutscenes, you have a kind of a retro, pixelated art style. You have flat 2D sprites, which I noticed on some of the characters, so some of the other players and the other troopers. And then you have kind of fully 3D, but quite low poly on the bugs themselves. And the environments do look very much like, although they're well done, they do look very kind of 90s, so big, expansive, kind of flat locations for you to explore. Part of me would love to see a kind of photorealistic, kind of high glossy Starship Troopers, kind of going down the Unreal kind of route, just because, it could be a really nice, dark, gritty shooter. However, I think this wasn't really going for that, and I really appreciate the fact that they had made a decision as to what the style was going to be, and they stuck to it. They didn't kind of bleed into any of this kind of photorealistic stuff. It was very much grounded in that video game feel. So yeah, I think there's a lot of consistency in the graphics overall. One slight downside I found about the graphics was that once I cleared an area of bugs, I did find that the maps themselves were quite large and quite bare and barren. Again, it does sort of scream Battlefield, and it does scream kind of 90s shooter You know, you don't have signposts saying go here and take this path to get there. It does let you find your own way. So I did appreciate that. But yeah, I think yeah, they did look a little bit barren when there's no enemies in those areas. That's the only other thing I could say. It's got a really strong creative direction. I really like the mix of 3D characters and 2D sprites, especially on the soldiers when they're marching around. They do have that kind of, you know, they only turn at kind of 45 degrees, and they were really well animated as well. So yeah, it all just looks really nice, and it's definitely set within that kind of 90s shooter, which I did appreciate. So for a graphics perspective, I think this is going to be 7 out of 10. Gameplay. So what did I do in 20 minutes? Well, surprising amount, actually. So outside of the cutscenes, you open up with a training area, which I found to be a lot of fun. It looks and sounds exactly like the film, so I kind of recognized the locations quite well. Really enjoyed exploring those bits. There's a platforming section that I filled a few times. I just didn't know how to use a zip line properly. I guess that's how I would be in real life as well, so it's not a surprise I fell off there. And also I found that there's a game of Capture the Flag, and it felt like it was one-shot kill, so they would shoot me and I would be dead straight away. I had to get through that mission quite a few times before I could get to the end, but it was very satisfying when I did get to the end. And then after that, you open up into the first area, which is Clendathu, as I've said, which is the kind of a famous scene in the film. It's the planet of the bugs, and you do basically reenact the opening of the film, which I really enjoyed. There's a lot of things to do. There's lots of stuff to shoot. There's lots of exploration. There's just an overwhelming amount of bugs sometimes, and it's really intense and in your face. And then outside of just shooting bugs, there's kind of a boss bug that I fought that was in an area that I had to clear. There's little kind of bug nests that you have to destroy that stop them from spawning, which was fun. And also there are big bugs that are firing kind of projectiles up into space, and you have to sneak up on them and blow them up with a kind of an explosive charge. So there was a lot there. And I mean, as far as Starship Troopers the film is concerned, within the first 20 minutes of this game, I did tick off a huge chunk of what I would expect from the game. So the sort of scenes that I would want to see, the kind of the objectives and the chaos and the battles, and you know, there's a lot going on there, and I think, you know, they couldn't really front load this anymore with the gameplay. I understand from watching other reviews, as the further you go on, you get to play as the bug and all that sort of thing, which would be interesting to see how that turns out. But for an opening of a video game about Starship Troopers, this really did tick a lot of boxes, and as a huge fan of the film, I can't think that there's anything not in here. There's nothing absent from my experience that I wanted. When I finished playing this for my 20 minutes and started to do this review, I really did just want to carry on playing because it is just so much fun. So yeah, gameplay for this one is a 9 out of 10. The standout moment for me in my 20 minutes was really just loading into Clendathu, that first level, and just experiencing the onslaught of bugs running at me, and just the sound and the music and everything. It really got my nostalgia tingle going, and I just really enjoyed it. So yeah, I think if you're a fan of the franchise, you will find a similar amount of enjoyment from just loading in really and just experiencing it all. Final verdict, is this worth playing past 20 minutes? I'm going to go out there and say yes, I think it is. I'm obviously a huge fan of Starship Troopers, and this game really did just tick a lot of boxes for me. I really did grow up playing 90s games like Doom, Duke Nukem, and Quake and things, and this did just tick a lot of boxes, and I did feel like I was transported back to that era of my childhood. So nostalgic from a Starship Troopers IP point of view, and also nostalgic from a video game point of view. It's just everything I wanted, really, in a Starship Troopers game. It did make me want to play more. It makes me want to see what the rest of the game's like. And I think from judging this as a opening 20 minutes, I think there's a lot here to pull you in, and I think that you're going to want to continue playing, especially if you're a fan of the franchise. And I think even if you're not a fan of the franchise, you don't need to understand exactly all the ins and outs of the story and what's going on. It is very clear that this is just a video game for you to enjoy. If you want to shoot some bugs, if you want to have a good time, and I can see people experiencing Starship Troopers for the first time through this game and wanting to go back and discover the film for themselves. So yeah, I think there's a lot here. I can definitely recommend this one. And yeah, I just look forward to playing it more. So yeah, definitely pass the 20-minute test. And I'm going to give this one an 8 out of 10. What do you think? Are you a fan of Starship Troopers, the films, the TV show, or any of the other video games? And how does this one sit in your ranking as far as the IP is concerned? Do you think it did everything that you wanted from a Starship Troopers game, or do you think it could have done more? Would you prefer to see a more realistic take on the franchise, or are you happy with this very video gamey feel? Let me know down in the comments, and again, if you like these sort of videos, please do give me a subscribe. It really does help the channel grow and makes me pump out more of these videos as often as I can. I look forward to seeing you on the next one.